Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Korra x Asami x Kuvira? Part 2. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. So many grandchildren. Korra stifled a quiet peal of laughter as Naruto flopped onto the sofa beside her many minutes later, exhausted, beaten, and worn. Only a few hours ago, to be exact, the reincarnated blonde had expressed a very keen interest in meeting his descendants. Now, half the day was gone, and so was much of his enthusiasm. Between meeting Sue's children and keeping Lin from snapping at her over some misbegotten conflict, the master bender appeared to be at his wits' end and looking quite harried for the attempt. "It's all your fault, you know," she smirked. Cutest thing when he met Opal, though. "What, you mean there's another one?" He'd half groaned. "I've already met." "Hello," she'd stammered out. "It's a pleasure to meet you, grandfather. I've heard so many stories." His eyes had lit with delight, as if he were a completely different person. "Ah. So you're the airbender? Opal, right?" "Yes, grandfather." "Bah, don't be so formal. Call me Naruto." "Oh?" A blue iris creaked open from where he lay, fixing her with an aloof look, and a lazy smile that dashed those thoughts. Mirrored by the slashing rays of the setting sun, that grin made her heart skip a beat. "And how is this my fault, I wasn't here for the past few decades, in case you've forgotten. It's not my bloody fault they turned out like this." The last part emerged with an annoyed, almost wistful grumble as he rolled over and buried his head in a pillow. Korra gave him a moment to catch his breath. Then she poked him, once, twice. On the third jab he finally stirred. "Wah!" He groaned sleepily, snapping at her. "Can you see I'm trying to rest? I'd hoped we could talk a little more." The avatar blanched slightly at his unrepentant stare, her cheeks coloring as she realized that her fellow bender had actually dozed off in the few seconds she'd let him be. The thought still niggled at her, though. Naruto usually had more energy than this. A lot more. Just how exhausted was he? Did it have anything to do with Kaguya? Was she weakening him, somehow? Was the goddess, even now, draining his strength, gnawing at his soul for every instant that he contained her? The thought made her ill. He sighed, pushing himself up on an elbow. In that moment, Korra wanted nothing more than to head straight to bed and put these thoughts from her mind, but her audible anxiety paid pause to that idea. Instead, she leaned in closer, hoping to speak with him more. They hadn't really spoken of anything particularly worthwhile since their kiss in Ba Sing Se. Hell, they hadn't spoken of it at all. She knew she had no significant claim to him, not when he had wives and children abounding all over the world yet. "You said it wasn't your fault things turned out this way. What did you mean by that?" "I meant that I wasn't here." The avatar of change frowned, not seeing the point of her new questioning. "I did what I thought was right at the time and things just changed, I guess." He turned his gaze towards the window at their backs, eyeing the setting sun with something dangerously close to nostalgia. "Now I'm back and they've gone on without me." Naruto stifled another sigh, rolling his shoulders and producing a violently jarring pop of a sound. "Feels weird, seeing everyone like this. Older, with kids," he clarified quietly, those blue eyes flashing in eerie gold. "Sue has 5. Can you believe that? 5. I wasn't there when any of them were born. Hell, I barely stuck around when Toph popped her out. And that's not even the half of it. I haven't paid new Kyoshi a visit yet, but from what Suki told me it sounds like I'll need to kick some sense into my son before he starts a war. Then there's Azula and the fact that her one daughter, Ply, happens to be in love with Zahir, a wanted criminal, who wants me dead. And according to this lovely little missive," here he did tap a scroll in his pouch, "she went missing shortly after I left. Meaning she likely hooked up with said lowlife." At her wince, he slammed the parchment back into his coat. "I suppose you can see the problem here." "Kinda, yeah?" She reached for his hand, but her fellow avatar shook it off, rising instead from the couch. Without thinking, she moved to follow him. He led her away from the empty dining hall and towards the plaza. In the background she could just see the metal petals of Zaofu starting to close around them at the onset of night. In those shadows, his expression became worrying. "Look, I know that you're stressed, but stressed?" Naruto turned on her, his eyes darker than the abyss itself. "No. Stress is when you've lost something valuable, Or you can't remember where you put the keys to your car. Stressed is wondering what you will get a loved one for their birthday. His voice began to rise, breaking now as it rose into a towering shout. Stress is when lose your favorite pair of breeches, not when you contemplate the idea of familial fratricide. His voice dropped abruptly as it rose, pitching into an angry snarl of mournful regret. But it's not your concern. I started this mess when I left. I'll have to clean house once this business with Zahir is done. A touch of very real dread plucked at her heart. What do you mean by that? Oh, nothing. We'll just have a little chat is all. Korra cringed at the inherent promise of violence violating his voice, the unspoken word of what he would do to his own children if he ever laid eyes on them. Foam, his eldest, on Suki's side of the spectrum, and Ply, on Azula's side of the tree. Her own parents had never so much as said a harsh word to her, yet here Naruto was contemplating flaying the living tar out of 2 of his grandchildren. It stood as a stark reminder the blonde might be on the side of good, but his methods could be extreme. Do you regret it? What? He gave her a cross look as they finally settled upon a nearby bench. Your wives or grandchildren? Neither. Both. He muttered, yawning. Dunno. Do I need to point the fact that I died? Hey, alternate universe theory, remember? Bah. He laughed and flung out a small eddy of air at her. Shove your theories, Korra huffed and waved it aside, secretly glad to have distracted him from such morose thoughts. Best to end it on a positive note while she could. Well, it's getting late. Right. He rose, distracted. Good night, Korra. I'll see you in the MMPH. His words died off as her lips found his, softly, tenderly. Don't be a stranger, she whispered. She let him go with that chaste kiss, hoping it wouldn't be their last. Good night, Naruto. Later that night, you will be mine soon. Mua. Naruto lurched up and out of the nightmare with a pained gasp, eyes blazing black. His body was drenched in cold sweat, he realized, but that registered as little more than a footnote when he realized that his hair was longer. Bleached white. He could feel horns sticking out of his head. With a supreme effort, he quashed the changes and pushed them back down. Horns receded into his scalp. White became bleached blonde for now, the long tresses becoming short and spiky once more. It didn't take 2 brain cells to realize what had happened to him. Great. Now Kaguya was making a bid for control while he slept. Lovely. Thoughts of what she might do, given control, weighed at his mind. Stubbornly he pushed them back down. Just a dream. He soothed at himself and his hammering heart, eyes straying to his open eye. He didn't remember doing that window, watching as the branches rustled in a faint breeze. Just a dream. What happened next most certainly wasn't. Shing! Naruto glanced down at the trio of darts now protruding from his left arm, seemingly having come from out of nowhere. When did? Disdain flashed across his face and darkened his eyes. Reaching down, he plucked the 3 of them out with ease and stared bloody red daggers into the dark. It wasn't long before his eyes adjusted to the blackness, before a group of silhouettes in the gloom. Assassins? Kidnappers? He didn't know. Didn't care. The poison coursing through him was one he knew, one he'd felt once before. It was nothing but a hindrance to him now. An irritant. Seriously? He called into the darkness, rising from his bed. Shirsh venom? You're going to need more than that to stop me. Lightning crackled from his fingertips. He leapt in the same instant that a small hurricane slammed into the perch he'd occupied not a moment before. He'd just enough time to catch sight of the 3, or was it 4, benders before he was amongst them. He had just enough time to register their faces, just enough to raise his gaze and suck in a deep, fiery breath, and spit. Then all hell broke loose. No! Korra lurched up and out of the nightmare with a pained shriek, eyes blazing white as the last vestiges of the nightmare faded. Her body was drenched in cold sweat, she realized, her arms quivering nervelessly as she struggled in vain to drive the chill from her bare body. It had been so real. Naruto had been fighting and she'd seen him fall. Seen that thing unleashed, so terrifying, horrifyingly real, in the pain, she'd felt his pain, his anger, sorrow. Bad dream? A sleepy voice mumbled beside her, a chin coming to rest on her shoulder, his mouth delivering a soft kiss in the crook of her neck. Warm breath trickled into Korra's ear, mingling with his words. You've been having those an awful lot lately. Ah, you died. She whispered quietly, her voice emerging as a hoarse whisper. A lone tear spilled down her cheek, and she stubbornly wiped it away with the back of a hand before he could see. Stupid, her mind rebuked her angrily. Stupid and foolish. She was falling far too fast and much too hard for her fellow avatar, and she wanted to stop but she couldn't, and damn it all, just the thought of losing him. Naruto took her silence for what it was. If he was at all disturbed by her dream vision, he did precious little to show it. Okay, really bad dream, then. All that anxiety registered as little more than a mere footnote when he realized that she wasn't alone in her bed. Ah. Korra blinked, sighing, shuddering pleasantly, as a pair of warm arms encircled her from behind. Her skin prickled in gooseflesh as the memories of their night together came crashing down around her ears. Now she remembered, that was why she was so sore. Naruto, the avatar of change, nestled up behind her, his hands already working small wonders on the knots that were her shoulders. She could feel the strong fingers digging into her skin, not wandering as they before but gently moving and molding, driving the massive tension from her body. Korra shivered again. With a supreme effort, she quashed the urge to turn and kiss him, pushing at them, back down. Willed herself to relax as all the fury and stress and ire receded, replaced by a staid calmness in her soul. Oh yes, her voice hitched slightly, moaning as his hands descended upon a particularly sensitive spot. That's it. Right there. Right there. Why are you so good at this? A dusky laugh graced her ears. Used to be, I wasn't. Suki and Tylee taught me a few tricks. The rest I dunno, picked up along the way. Korra felt herself go very still at the mention of his former loves. They'd been avoiding the issue for some time now, either wishing to speak of it. But it still gnawed at her. He'd come right back after his short little visit, as if he were ashamed of himself, somehow. When she asked him, he refused to speak of it. But now, Naruto's hands paused, then moved to her lower back, grasping. It's complicated. I love them, but it was a long time ago. I'm fairly certain some of them still care, but others, like Katara, moved on. June died, for crying out loud. Azula and Suki haven't stopped loving me. Although, they were pretty pissed I was gone for so long. He tried to laugh, but it sounded weak, forced to her ears. Look, if you want a straight answer, I really don't know. I care about them still, but it's different now than what it used to be. If I hadn't died, maybe it wouldn't be this way. Who knows? And me? Korra suddenly felt very vulnerable in his arms, the night air cool against her nakedness. Where do I fit into all this? There was a weighted silence, and for a terrifying moment, she feared he wouldn't answer. Then his hand took hold of her cheek from behind, turning her face to his. Korra couldn't quite see him in the dark, what with the moon still hiding behind the clouds, but she certainly felt what came next. Let me show you. When the kiss came, it was cool and gentle, his mouth caging hers. Her tongue brushed against his lower lip, begging for entry, and he yielded at once, his arms circling and guiding her as she shifted against him. Almost at once she took control. Strong arms shoved him to the bed and took hold of his shoulders, pulling herself after him into his lap. It wasn't long she felt his hard member press against her slit, still moist. This time there was no hesitation. She took the full of him immediately, ignored the pain, and began rocking against him. Korra, no, she growled, pearly whites flashing, her words sounding fuzzy and faint as he became further and further distracted by those marvelous movements of her hips atop him, her breasts undulating with each sway. Let me show you. That lovely, bell-like laugh chimed once more as he kissed her again, his hands reaching up and cupping the back of her neck. She broke the kiss with a soft gasp and sank down to her knees, trailing a line along his neck with her mouth as she went. Part of him was grateful the bed was large enough to accommodate the two of them. The other stood appalled that one woman could take control of him so effortlessly. Because Korra did just that, lowering herself onto him once more, her hips swaying and grinding against his as she began to moan loudly. Any pain she might have felt at her first time was gone, replaced by desire, one mirrored in his own. And yet, despite that, he could not help but think of how much she'd changed since they'd met only a few months before. She'd been plenty bold to begin with, but this was new. You deserve to be happy, his fellow avatar ground out between gasps, and by the gods, I intend to make you do that. His response was to lean up and suckle her breast, his hands generously kneading the others. Ah, a small whimper escaped from her throat, despite her eyes still being closed, and her head remaining tilted back in pleasure. Naruto held on to the moment a tad longer. His eyes swept over her body as it heaved up and down with her breaths. Despite his initial reservation about having sex with Korra, he really enjoyed funking her. Why had he waited this long? Why had he resisted her advances, her pleas to take things further than they already had? If he'd known he was missing out on something like this, he would have tossed his morality aside years ago. His mind ceased its wayward wandering as she quickened her pace atop him, placing her hands on his chest so she could make more of an up and down motion. Her moans began growing louder as she bounced above him. He could feel her legs begin to quiver as she moved, the muscles in her body reacting to, and tightening with, the pleasure of her oncoming orgasm. Closer to his own release as well, he found himself powerless to resist, as she rode him on into blinding oblivion and sweet, blessed release, feeling it build. Naruto, Korra! A final soul-searing shout as they came together. Naruto collapsed onto the bed, his laughter tapering off at the last. Korra toppled after him with a soft mewling sound, nestling her head deep into the crook of his still damp neck. The sigh that issued forth from her lips was pure bliss, her head nuzzling into his neck. I love you. The words stopped, restarted, and stopped her heart all over again. More than anything else in the world. You know that, right? Why? She turned, fixing him with those bright, eerie blue eyes. Odd. Was that a dash of violet in them? Stifling his anxiety, he managed a laugh. Well, I always had a thing for water tribe girls. Flatterer, I try. When his hands moved to cup her waist, kneading again, Korra felt that inner peace boil away, replaced by renewed desire. He did care. He wasn't just using her as some floozy, a one-time cast-off to be used, then ignored, then forgotten. A bead of warmth gathered between her legs and she turned, wriggling in his grasp and pushing him into the light. All right, my turn. She started at what she saw there. Her hands formed a small tent over her mouth, stifling the gasp. Oh God! Blonde was bleached with strands of white, one eye an eerie milky lavender. And the horns. He had horns. Spirits, what did you? Sorry. He huffed. Let me fix that. White became bleached blonde for now, the long tresses becoming short and spiky once more as color returned to his visions. It didn't take 2 brain cells to realize what had happened to him. I told you I don't sleep much anymore, he said, looking just a little ashamed, his finger brushing a horn emerging from his scalp, stubbornly pushing it back down. This happens when I do. Doesn't matter, really. I already had plenty of stamina to begin with, and now so should you. Naruto, I don't. He barked at her, waving the hand away when she tried to coat it with healing water. Just don't, Korra. I appreciate the thought, but I don't want your pity. I chose this fate for myself the moment I came back to life. He could read her expression, the joy she'd felt at making love with him being slowly eaten away at the realization. Great. Now Kaguya was making a bid for control while he slept. Lovely. Thoughts of what she might do, given control, weighed at her mind. Stubbornly he pushed her back down. I'll be fine. He soothed at her in her hammering heart, just so long as I don't overdo it. Eyes strayed to the open odd. He didn't remember doing that window, watching as the branches rustled in a faint breeze. If you say so. It'll be alright. What happened next most certainly wasn't. Shing! Naruto glanced down at the trio of darts now protruding from his left arm, seemingly having come from out of nowhere. When did? Korra froze. No, this wasn't happening. It was the same as her dream. No. Naruto snarled and flung a fist forward, a sea of blue-white fire erupting from his fists. A series of startled and pained grunts reached their ears, and when she looked again, the blonde was hastily jerking his pants on over his shorts, heedless of his relative state of undress. Disdain flashed across his face and darkened his eyes. Reaching down, he plucked the 3 of them out with ease and stared bloody red daggers into the dark. It wasn't long before his eyes adjusted to the blackness, before a group of silhouettes in the gloom. Assassins? Kidnappers? He didn't know. Didn't care. The poison coursing through him was one he knew, one he'd felt once before. It was nothing but a hindrance to him now, an irritant. Seriously? He called into the darkness, rising from his bed. Sure, Venom? You're going to need more than that to stop me. Lightning crackled from his fingertips. He leapt in the same instant that a small hurricane slammed into the perch he'd occupied not a moment before, Korra leaping a ways after him, grabbing at her clothes even as he lunged. Time seemed to slow, his leap carrying him out of the broken window and into the courtyard. Just enough time to catch sight of the 3 or was it 4 benders before he was amongst them. He had just enough time to register their faces, just enough to raise his gaze and suck in a deep, fiery breath, and spit. Then all hell broke loose. Benders scattered and broke apart, striking from all sides, forcing him to move. Always leaping, always running, always deflecting, ever on the move. Where was Korra? Come to think of it, where was everyone? Some small part of him knew something was wrong. It had to be, but he couldn't tell what. Uzumaki Naruto snarled back at them, his body standing framed in the full moonlight, shoulders hunched. There was a moment of tense silence as everyone stared at him. Then he smiled at Zahir. Yeah, not paralyzed. Were you expecting the? The airbender offered a spry shrug, suspiciously at ease. I suppose this wouldn't have been a challenge, otherwise OMPH. Naruto lowered his clenched hand, not even sparing a second glance as the column of air smashed him and Minghua into the ground. Naruto spun even as the boulder came whistling towards him, shattering it with a single headbutt, much to Gazan's dismay. Another shockwave punch sent him flying too. Then he saw Ply. A pit opened in his stomach. Should have known you'd follow your heart. Ah, to her ears he sounded almost sad. Resigned. Well, I suppose we should do this then? His hand snapped back, another fierce column of air circling his palm. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I failed you as a father. I'll be more gentle with you this time, knock you out. Amazingly, she faltered at that. Father, I get him. Gazan roared. Despite her reservations, Ply was the first to react, her eyes widening with a cone of destruction. She'd seen what her father could do. If she could just stun him for a moment. Too slow, kid! Naruto whirled away from the explosion in a swirl of motion. But even as he moved, the earth beneath him bucked and turned to lava, searing through the soles of his boots. Grimacing, he spun, fingers all but clenching into claws. Then he metal bent, sundering a nearby wall. It spun like a discus before him, absorbing another concussive blast before a wall of wind ripped it from his grasp. Zahir and Minghua had recovered, much to his chagrin, and Gazan wasn't far behind. Hissing, he turned and sprang from the city. After him. Get off! Korra roared, her eyes flashing a hellish silver white as she tore free of her prison and swatted Iway away. I'll kill you! The bender had come from seemingly out of nowhere to ambush her before she could aid Naruto, momentarily trapping her in a coffin of metal. Then he tried to pour some strange liquid down her throat. Poison, he'd called it. And it might have worked too, were it not for the energy still surging inside of her. Naruto's energy. The connection, past, experience, power, all that he had given her. A reservoir of untapped energy, energy now unleashed. Snarling, she took that very poison and poured it down the man's throat. She didn't wait to see how it would affect him. She was already marching out the broken window, her eyes locked on the flashes of light and fire in the distance. A storm was coming, so was she. Naruto. Just hang on a little longer. Naruto ran. Fire pumped through him, his energy building, cresting, flagging as he darted through the valley and into the forest, all the while painfully aware of his pursuers. Still he ran, determined to lead them on a merry chase, to at least exhaust them before they drove him to the last dregs of his strength. From there he took to the trees, leaping up and away in a swirl of motion. Zahir was hot on his heels. Naruto growled. This, he said through clenched teeth and labored breaths as his body dodged through the foliage, is just too much. The former convict frowned, effortlessly keeping pace with him. What's so funny? Heh. The pair of trees next to him suddenly exploded as another of Ply's encompassing explosions descended upon them, missing the avatar of change by a hair's width before incinerating the great oak. Naruto rolled to the side as the firebender's concussive blast extinguished upon the ground, the short sleeves of his black robe sizzling from the heat. With a quick twist of his body, he spun himself off the earth and quickly launched into the air at his attacker. You think I'm trapped in this forest with you, when you're the ones trapped in here with me? He immediately swung forward with his hand as he reached his desired altitude, Zahir barely dodging the swift surge of lightning that leapt from his fingers. Unlike last week, he'd regained a good deal of his stamina and was finding that his initial form was faring rather well against the quartet of benders. Whereas he'd barely had enough strength to fight for more than an hour last week, he could already feel his body warming up, the strength sticking with him despite Kaguya's relentless battering. Was she holding back? Gathering her strength for a final assault? He wondered, and as he wondered he battles, old instincts coming back to him as he fought, which was not to say that he was unscathed, quite the contrary. Naruto had found himself dodging and narrowly avoiding almost every attack that Team Anti-Avatar continued TP sent his way. He was still in one piece physically, but he could feel that his endurance was beginning to falter. Time to move to the offensive, while he still could. Well, this ought to be fun. Naruto suddenly vanished, whispering back into existence directly behind his startled opponent. Minghua brought her icy arms slashing downwards, but the Avatar of Change was able to move at the last second, turning a possibly lethal strike into a shallow cut that extended across his jacket and opened the stomach beneath. Naruto skidded backwards on one foot, his heel digging into the branch beneath it. After a quick glance down at his fresh wound, his lips formed an insincere pout. That wasn't very nice. Then his eyes flashed black. I do believe you've killed my favorite shirt. Now, in a sudden, savage swing, he burst into his avatar state and stepped forward, eyes flashing violet, 6 arms bristling. Bansho Tenin? That was all it took. One yank and Minghua found herself impaled on the jagged edge of his hand, speared to the elbow by the unyielding ebon arm. In the next instant he flung her down, leaving her to bleed out at the edge of the canyon. Even then, she might have lived to see another day with healing, were it not for her close proximity to the Avatar, had not her presence attracted the leech inside of Naruto. Instead, the waterbender choked wordlessly as something drank deeply from her life force, eyes rolling back into her head. Kaguya. The rabbit goddess swallowed her whole without remorse, using this armless bender to fuel her power. She perished without so much as a whisper, her soul stolen, taken, devoured. What are you waiting for? Attack. Ply hesitated when those soulless eyes found hers. No, she couldn't do this. She'd thought she could, thought they were just going to capture him, but no. Zahir wanted to kill him. Her father. Papa. The man who bounced her on his knee and told her stories, the one who had taught her to control her gifts, tucked her in at night, always treated her like his little princess. The man who'd left her and Mama for the beyond far too soon. This man, who was fighting for his life, gasping in pain and agony with every breath, fighting so hard, tears gathered in her eyes. She loved him. But she also loved Zahir. No. She couldn't do this. She just couldn't. For the first time, the daughter of Azula did something strange, something she'd never done before. She backed down. Naruto didn't notice, his eyes snapping to Zahir. Next, with a roar, he lunged and dropped to a knee, gagging, frozen in mid-strike. Shit! Before Zahir's very eyes, the Avatar of Change began to tremble, his entire body convulsing violently. His eyes flashed white. His body toppled to its knees. He vomited once, expelling a stream of bloody mucus into the soil. All the strength, all the power that he'd gathered into his body. It was gone. So was his avatar state. Vanished. Fury filled him. Not his own, but that of another, the raging, potent wrath of a goddess caged. At last, no, he hissed, clawing at his face. Now is not the time. Bloodied, his victim scrambled backwards, his chest still heaving for air. He could feel the bruises forming on his neck where he'd nearly been strangled. Then slowly, ever so slowly, he smiled. Climbed back to his feet, gathering himself once more. At first he was baffled, unable to understand what had saved his life. Then he saw it. Then he started walking, until he towered over his tormentor. He felt her, writhing inside the husk of the Avatar's body. Clawing to get out. Kaguya. It's a shame, Zahir smirked, standing over him. Naruto glared up at him, impotent as he continued. You can't fight her and me at the same time. Naruto grunted as a wall of wind violently ripped him from his feet and sent him crashing into the cliffside. Weakened as he was by the rabbit goddess raging deep within himself, his very soul, he couldn't bring himself to earthbend. Not in time. The rock burst before his back with a resound thwack of a sound, a series of sharp cracks spreading as he smashed into it, his limbs spread eagled at either side. He could still hear the fighting down in the valley. Gazan. It must be him. He was fighting her, stalling her. Where the hell was Korra when he needed her? Okay, that funking hurts. That thought dissolved as Zahir kanonied into him, shattering the cliff wall and flinging him through. A burst of flame leveled him out before he crashed to the unyielding soil below, only for another spasm of agony to cripple him, guttering the flames out. And in that instant Zahir struck, flattening him against the ground. "Idiot," Naruto groaned, ripping a limb free. "If you kill me, you have no idea what you'll release." Zahir drifted after him, utterly untethered to the world, confident in his triumph. "It doesn't matter. It's a shame," he said. "You almost had me." He lurched upright, avoiding certain death at the last, his fist cannonading out with a fraction of its true strength. "Zahir!" Naruto grunted as another blow rained down on him. Then another. And another. And still another. All the while Kaguya beat at the gates. "Well," he muttered through blood-bleached teeth, "this isn't going well." "No. It isn't. My turn." "What?" "No. Don't you dare." Naruto fought off her presence with all his might. "You don't belong here. Go back to sleep, you stupid goddess. This is it. Farewell." "No!" Before Zahir could strike, an explosion slammed into his unprotected flank. The sudden surge of fire and heat knocked the man sprawling, but only for a moment. He was up again almost instantaneously, scarred face a rictus of angry and confusion. He snapped around, eyes flashing. "What?" he cried. "What are you doing?" Naruto felt just a touch of pride as he caught a flash of red in his peripherals. "That's my girl." That was his last thought before his vision went black. Ply was going to die. She was almost certain of it now, because she saw the death in the eyes of her beloved eyes as he stalked towards her, staff in hand. Exhausted, she readied herself for the next onslaught. She'd fought the good fight against him in Gazan, even crippled the latter, but in the end, she simply hadn't been able to bring her hand to strike the one she loved. And Zahir had taken advantage of that. Ruthlessly. He harbored no such restraint to hold him back, and the dozen cuts on her arms and legs bore grim testament to that. "You shouldn't have interfered, Ply." The words were a growl, his approach relentless. "Now you'll die with him," Ply huffed, blowing a dark strand of hair out of her eyes. "What can I say?" She sighed bitterly, rolling her slim shoulders in a shrug. "Like father, like daughter, I guess. I'm too stubborn for my own good." "Pity." Zahir twitched. That was the only warning she received. Vaulting away from a hurricane blast, the firebender prepared an assault of her own. Too late, she felt the ground turn to magma beneath her feet. "Gazan!" Hissing, she danced away, eyes narrowing in the direction of her one-time ally. Concentrating. Focusing, even as he raised the shield dash. BKRM! With a thunderous crack of sound, the lava bender found himself blasted backwards by a wave of sheer explosive force. His body skipped across the scorched earth like a flung stone upon a lake, tumbling end over end despite his best efforts to halt his momentum. Ply glowered, her third eye tensing angrily as she prepared another blast to finish him off. "Got you!" Too slow. Oxygen slipped from her lungs as a debilitating shroud of wind fell over her face, her instinctive inhalation replacing air with only the void. Her head pounded, body screaming at the sudden and abrupt lack of life-giving air. No breath, couldn't breathe. Desperately she lashed out at Zahir, and somehow she found her target, her fist connecting solidly with her adversary's ribs. The vacuum around her visage dissipated reluctantly as its master lost control of the vortex, turning the deadly breath bending into little more than a sputtering breeze against her face. Gasping for breath, Ply flung a weak stream of fire after him, one that was easily batted aside. His staff descended without a single misbeat, cracking painfully into her side and hurling her away with the wind. Landing hurt. Then again, with Zahir, it always hurt. "Give up!" "Never." Clawing her way up, the battered combustion bender took hold of a low-hanging branch and pulled herself to her feet. Her right arm ached horribly, her left hung uselessly at her side. She knew without looking that it was well and truly broken. Yet despite the pain, despite the agony of her aching body, she stood, sucked in a breath, and Zahir knocked it right out of her. "This is pointless, Ply," he admonished. "You can't beat me. Why are you being so stubborn?" Stubborn, indeed. Perhaps she'd gotten it from her father. Perhaps that was why she railed against her fate, from the moment she'd stepped between the two loves of her life, that her time was up. She'd fought the good fight, and she was losing handily. On one side stood Zahir, the man who held her heart. On the other Naruto, the father she'd barely known, yet had now stepped in to defend. In hindsight, she almost wondered why she'd done it in the first place. Why had she gotten in the way in the first place? What had prompted her to take that action? Was some sliver of sentiment that caused her to turn against Zahir at the last moment, to blast him in the back as she did? Why? It's over. Zahir remained adamant, shaking his head. The least I can do is send you to the spirit world together. Turning, he uttered one word. Gazan! Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Ply watched in disbelief, felt time slow to a crawl as she saw the lava bender reappear over the crest of the hill, battered, bruised, but still alive. He stomped down once, miming a mighty pulling motion in their direction. Magma burst to life around them, its purpose clear, intent obvious. Naruto groaned. This seriously isn't funny. I can't move, she barely heard him. Again. Maybe because somewhere, deep down, she still remembered those days. Again. Ply remembered a happier time, a better place, better world even. Again. A place where a little girl had found comfort in her father's arms. Flashback. Again. She was suddenly a little girl again, not yet a combustion bender, staring into the eyes of death itself. The Fire Lord watched her intently from on high, amber eyes reflecting nothing as she sat amidst the blue flames. The roiling azure inferno seemed to emanate from the woman's eyes itself, deadly tongues of sapphire licking across her mahogany-colored robe thrown to spread across the steps, reaching for the room itself, for her. No! Calm down, calm down, calm down! Again, Ply shuddered, trying and failing to shrink down into her robe. The black and golden silk offered her no protection from her parents' gaze, however. You couldn't hide from those eyes, she knew she'd tried. Despite the fact that she knew she hadn't done anything wrong this time, she cowered beneath that flat, emotionless stare. Disrespected, and its owner would chew you up and spit you out like an angry Komodo rhino. The Fire Lord wasn't the sort to mince words, she knew this all too well. After all, she was her daughter, again. The voice of her mother repeated, crisp, commanding. You're not finished. Gulping, she rose off her scuffed knees, mustering up her courage. Fire-bending had never been her strong suit, despite being the daughter of a self-proclaimed deity and a bending prodigy. But she'd worked hard at it, and today, she was determined to disprove what her mother thought of her, that she was not weak, that she was not a failure, that she was a worthy heir to the throne. Yes, she told herself, today would be the day. With a spiraling leap she vaulted into the first stance of the form she'd been taught, simultaneously expelling a stream of golden fire from her feet to propel herself forward. Atop the dais, she thought she saw Mother blink. It might have been her imagination. From there the sequence dissolved into a series of flowing strikes, each accompanied by another, if slightly less elegant, stream of flame. She worked herself into a frenzy, focused only on the rhythm, the movements, a cyclone of brilliant bending culminating in a snarling series of sparks from her fingers as she traced them up, down, around. Bzzzzzzzt. A thunderous crack of lightning bolted from her hand with a jarring crack, snaring a drape and setting it alight. A trio of ebon hairs fluttered down from her mother's head. Ply froze. She stood like that for a long time. Panting, fingers extended, heart in her throat. Then came the clapping. That's my girl. The voice startled her, because it didn't belong to her mother. It had come from behind, near the entrance. Few on this continent possessed the gall to march into the Fire Lord's palace without an invitation. Even fewer dared to address the princess, so least of all when Azula herself explicitly forbade nearly her entire staff from her chambers for the day. And only one man could sneak past the royal firebenders unsinged to stand before them, grinning like a man. Daddy, your girl? Azula scoffed aloud, rising from the throne with a laugh. She's my daughter too, Naruto. I expect no less of her. Still, the ghost of a smile pulled at her the corners of her mouth as she turned her head ever so slight. I suppose that's enough for one day. Ply needed no further encouragement. She all but ran to her father, squealing as he swept her up in his arms. Daddy? You're back, just for a bit. He chuffed quietly. Thought I'd stop in to see my favorite girl. Favorite? Azula scoffed as he kissed her softly, lounging on the dais. It wasn't so long ago that I had that position. Funny, you weren't complaining last week. The blonde snarked. The Fire Lord purred softly, leaning towards her husband. Perhaps you'd like a demonstration. You, no more kissy faces. Right. Naruto seconded, sighing. I'm afraid I don't have time for that today. Ply felt her spirits falter. You mean, you're going away again? Bah, there's some crap going on in the water tribe. Ing's been bugging me about it. Gotta check it out. You're coming back, right? Of course I am, he crowed proudly. I'm the avatar of the gods. What kind of weakling do you take me for? Pinky promise? Her words stopped him in his tracks. Crouching down to her level, he extended a hand, little finger thrust out. Pinky promise. She wouldn't see him again until she was an adult. And flashback. Why am I thinking about that now? She supposed it didn't matter now. Not anymore. The past was the past, and it couldn't be changed no matter how much she might wish it otherwise. Her father had died that day, and in his place, he'd left her behind to mourn as best she could. Now that he returned, she almost found herself wishing for happier times, even now, at death's door. She managed to turn her head. Father, Naruto coughed wetly, opening an eye. I really was a crappy parent. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Nothing happened. The lava extinguished itself against a pillar of rock, molten magma sluicing harmlessly to either side of the stony monument. Naruto dared to open an eye. Korra, for crying out loud, Blondie! A rough, drawling voice declared gruffly, just how many times do I have to pull your ass out of the fire? Propping himself up on his elbows, the battered blonde dared to risk a glance in the direction of their unlikely savior. A hand descended mercilessly on his head from behind, unceremoniously burying his whiskered face in the murky mud. Sputtering, her jerked back up, gasping for air, succeeding only in sucking more mud down his maw. What the hell? Who, then? His eyes got really big. He knew that voice. That shadow. This woman. That same, snarky attitude. Who'd you think it was? Twinkletoes? She spun, glowering. Looking at her, he realized she hadn't changed a bit, as if she'd stood, frozen in time since the day he'd died. The first metalbender, former chief of police in Republic City. Perhaps the one woman who'd put the fear of God into him, a dying deity himself. The only one who'd broken his arm in 3 different places when she'd given birth to his daughters. A one-woman army beyond all compare, still in her youth and prime. Toph Beifong. Toph, a bare foot descended ruthlessly, kicking him in the head. Naruto yelped, What the hell? Don't you what the hell me? She snapped back, grinding her saws against his face. That's for dying the first time, jackass. Stomp. Did I give you permission to go and sacrifice yourself like that? Her foot pressed down on his visage once more with almost comical malice, muffling his reply. Did I say you had a choice? Huh. I did. Not. What were you thinking leaving me alone with those 2 brats? What made you think I was fit to raise them by myself? Sorry. Weakened as he was, Naruto could only cower before his wife. You're gonna be sorry when I get through with you, bub. Where the hell have you been anyway? Places. A hand rose, errantly brushing the dark curtain of her hair aside. A little birdie told me you were back. So I thought I'd see for myself. Wasn't expecting to see you like this. Guess you needed me to bail you out again. Oh, she jerked a thumb over her shoulder in the same instant that a distant speck appeared on the horizon. I found the new Twinkletoes while I was at it. Kinda like her. By the time she'd finished speaking, it was more than a speck, it was a burning star, a falling comet from Zufu, growing bright and brighter with each passing moment until, Zahir! In the next instant, a billowing pillar of fire roared to life between the Red Lotus and Naruto. She looked like wrath incarnate in the avatar state, an avenging angel come down from heaven. Eyes and angry veiled whitish-purple narrowed upon the mad monk, her hair swirling behind her as she stalked forward, snapping in the savage gale of her arrival. And somehow, the fool actually smiled. So nice of you to join us, Avatar. Crunch. Shut up. Korra's fist shot out mercilessly, clenched knuckles crunching against the airbender's face with enough force to shatter most of his teeth. Whatever else the Red Lotus leader might have said dissolved into senseless gibberish as he clutched at the broken pearly whites in disbelief. Ply contented herself with that sight before she finally slumped to the ground, exhaustion overtaking her. She'd done her best, given it her all, now it fell to the others to do what she could not. Naruto had never been so proud of all of them. You deal with the windbag, Toph declared. Lava Boy's mine. Deal. You think you can kill me, you old fossil? Gazan growled. Just try it. Toph glared for several seconds without letting up, veins throbbing visibly in her forehead. Those pale lavender eyes were cast in shadow, and gleaming with baleful light. Her lips curled back almost of their own accord, baring the Master Bender's teeth in a decidedly vicious snarl. "Oh, I'm not gonna kill ya," she drawled slowly, cracking her knuckles. "I'm just going to hurt you really, really bad. Think I'll start with your eyes." Gazan gulped. "Oh hell, now." In that same instant, Naruto stiffened. "Not now." "Yes. Now. I will be denied no longer." Blue eyes flashed white. "Shit, shit, shit." He flashed her a small, strained, sheepish smile. "Take it from here, would ya, Korra? I believe in you." I can't hold her back anymore." A pit opened in the young Bender's stomach, her eyes widening as his entire body seemed to pulse, writhing from within. His head snapped back, eyes staring furiously at the starry sky. Then he chuckled. The others drew back, even Zahir, but not her. She tried to step forward, but laughter, the laughter of a woman, ripped from the blonde's throat. It was dark exultance, rich and glorious, modulated to a maddened degree. "Naruto! Don't!" Too late. With a great, heaving gasp, Naruto doubled over and heaved. "Irk!" There could be no other word for it, and Korra didn't have time to contemplate as something emerged from within his mouth. Everything collapsed down around her as the white substance took shape from his mouth, assuming human form. She could feel it crushing her. Everything was moving so fast. She was drowning in water she couldn't see. Every fear she'd ever had came back to her at once. Monsters surrounded her. Her stomach inverted, her hope shriveled out of existence, and her heart caved in as she watched that thing rise from within, a dark shadow in the night. Because she was looking at a monster, words alone couldn't even begin to describe the terrifying dread she felt when she looked into those eerie white eyes. They conveyed a sense of menace that Naruto never had. They were pure evil. There was no mercy in this creature, no pity, no kindness. Only a cold, empty void, intent on devouring all. She stood there a long moment, unmoving. Then, slowly, she raised a hand. At last, freedom. She just raised her hand. That was all it took for Gazan to collapse in a bloody heap at her feet. Zahir looked on, awed, as he climbed to his feet. At last, Kaguya's body suddenly exploded in violent motion, showering everyone in dust as she lurched forwards at Zahir, forcing the airbender to retreat. Incredibly, she ceased her pursuit the moment he retreated. Lifting her head slowly, the goddess craned her neck slowly, almost loosely and somewhat erratically to look at the direction of the airbender, a twitching, spasmodic movement to her motions. A lone finger rose, pointing her wrath at the mad monk. "You don't get to kill them." Her voice rolled through the air like smoke through honey, madness incarnate. "That pleasure, the honor of crushing Naruto's last hope, belongs to me." Incredible. "But I won't be stopped here." His hand shot back, channeling the wind in his palm. "Ha!" Kaguya didn't even wait until it was close enough to obliterate her, she just kept walking, moving unimpeded in the face of the overwhelming wind. She made no move to defend himself, she simply continued forward in spite of the attack, striding relentlessly onward as her body disappeared into the light. Still Zahir poured more and more of his chi into the attack, determined to obliterate the encroaching goddess before she could hope to try and reach his position. It was only when his immeasurable reserves threatened to abandon him completely that he released his hold on the technique, letting those brilliant blue streamers fall away. "There!" he gasped out, glaring into the cloud of dust and debris obscuring his vision for miles in either direction. "How do you, huh?" Kaguya stood there before him less than a foot away, utterly unfazed, her hair swaying gently, skin still steaming from where the wave had made contact. She was smiling. "Is that all?" The next thing Zahir knew, the next thing he could comprehend, something struck his abdomen with more force than he could ever hope to conceive. Beneath that single, explosive punch, the madman's defensive aura shattered, his skin tore, his blood boiled and evaporated, and the base of his spine liquefied. He remained still for a few seconds as the wind melted away, twitching spasmodically. Then he pitched forwards with a wet gurgle, vomiting blood and collapsing in a boneless heap. A blow of that caliber would have ended a lesser warrior, not him. An RGHK. "How can you? What have you done to me?" Instead, he was forced to lay there, helpless, struggling to regenerate as Kaguya stalked towards him. Not enough time. Even as he frantically fought his body to move, to do something, anything at all, the eerie goddess closed the gap between them, those soundless footsteps a silent harbinger to his end. And then she was suddenly there, towering over him, her light body blotting out the moon. A dark specter come to reclaim what had been lost. 6 sinister words snaked past those stern lips, making themselves known through her stone-cold facade. I thank you, mortal, for my freedom. Then she struck down, and he knew no more. An eerie silence hung over the world as she stood there, smiling, her hands coated in the man's blood. Then, that same eerie smile never once leaving her face, she turned on them. Now, which one of you should I butcher first? Toph frowned. If by butcher you mean please kick my pretty little ass kicked to the North Pole, sure, I'm game. Rolling her shoulders, she stepped forward to meet the mad god, fingers twitching furiously. I owe you an ass-kicking for taking Naruto away from me the first time. There won't be a second for you. You have spirit. The deity blinked. I will enjoy draining you of it. You can try. An eerie silence hangs over the world as Kaguya hands there in the air, smiling, hands coated in Zahir's blood. Then, that same eerie smile never once leaving her face, she turns on them. Now, which one of you should I butcher first? Toph frowns. If by butcher you mean pretty, please kick my pretty little ass to the North Pole, sure, I'm game. Rolling her shoulders, she steps forward to meet the mad god, fingers twitching furiously. I owe you an ass-kicking for taking Naruto away from me the first time. There won't be a second for you. You have spirit. The deity blinks. I will enjoy draining you of it. Toph grins. It was all teeth. You can try. And then the earth exploded. 12 pillars of earth rose in the same instant that Kaguya flicked her wrist, hardened stone and soil meeting an invisible force, shattering all but one. The final column of earth broke through the barrier and struck the goddess square in the stomach with jarring force. Catapulted away into the air like a spinning top, her white hair pinwheeling wildly around her, Kaguya found that her once supreme confidence was nowhere to be found any longer, though that might have something to do with the giant meteor about to crash headlong into her. What the hell? What madness was this? Blue eyes caught hers as several thousand tons of rock and napalm crashed down onto her. A low hiss fled from her lips. I am not amused. Coughing blood, Naruto lowered his arm. Choke on it. Then the meteor fell from heaven, and she knew only blinding white. For a fleeting instant there was pain, actual pain. Infuriating. These ants dared to touch her holy body? To harm her? Were they trying to weaken her again, seal her away again, trap her in the depths of spirit or some other, fleshy body? The gall! She would not have it! Toph and Korra leaped at her as one as she emerged from the rubble, earth and fire meeting her with a shower of sparks, momentarily driving the goddess back with the sheer momentum of their simultaneous strike. Still, she rather liked these odds. She could certainly handle an earthbender and an upstart avatar, she told herself. These fools had handed her victory on a silver platter. Several blocks later swiftly disavowed her of that opinion. Toph and Korra were not fighting fury with fury as she'd so suspected. They were eerily calm, composed even. When Korra cut high, Toph cut low. When Korra stabbed, the older bender made use of her greater experience and slashed. When Kaguya sought to retreat, they worked to drive her into a corner. She was swiftly seeing her mistake in not eliminating the bending master. What Korra might be lacking in stamina, she more than made up for in ferocity and determination. Toph's sheer experience made up for the avatar's apparent lack of strength. Together they pressed the attack, driving her to the outskirts of the city and to the plains leading towards the mountains. Kaguya knew that if they continued in this form, she risked losing not only the battle, but her life as well. The tide needed to turn. Now, maintaining her defense, she glanced from one foe to the other, taking their measure. Toph was clearly the more skilled, immune to many of her techniques, her unusual density in the fabric of life preventing her from simply yanking her from the ground and ending this outright. What's more, she had an unbelievable well of stamina to draw upon, powers yet untapped in this duel. Something was sustaining her, keeping her energies from flagging. But not Korra. The avatar had only her own stamina to sustain her, and that could only do so much. Even now Kaguya could see sweat beading on her brow as she struggled to maintain Toph's blistering pace. She was still young, and for all her raw potential, lacked the experience to keep up with a battle of this caliber. She was vulnerable. There, Kaguya whirled, planting a booted footed in the brunette's midsection, staggering her, then stabbing at her unprotected face with a clawed hand. A wall of unyielding steel shot upward, closing around the deadly limb, halting it mere centimeters from Korra's face. The primordial goddess howled in frustration and pushed down, fighting against the Lady of Earth in a contest of her own. And in part she succeeded, blasting the avatar with a searing column of fire, snapping her leg and hurling her to the ground in a shrieking heap. The goddess laughed at the sight. So close. Just a little more, Korra? With the other one down, she was certain victory would at long last be hers. Then freedom would truly be hers. Sensing Toph's distraction, she chose that exact instant to attack with her other hand. A clawed hand tore through her stomach, shredding fabric and cloth and earth. Claws passed through a creature of clay, rendering her surprise strike utterly ineffective. More so when Toph faded away to reveal a creature of white clay, her hand trapped in his lower torso. Said creature bunched and bulged around her arm, glowing an angry shade of gold, then orange, then saffron. Oh hell. Katsu! It was a very annoying explosion, Kaguya decided. It singed her hair and got her clothes horribly dirty. If that was the most this earthbender could bring to bear on her, then she was going to be sorely disappointed after all. Aha! There! A whisper of movement at her left was her only warning before an upturned elbow struck the back of her head. Shrieking in surprise, the horned deity spun about, but the Toph was gone once more. Kaguya's gaze slid to the right. That wasn't very nice, bitch. The fist came up hard, sending Kaguya flying even higher into the air than ever before. Flailing, she tried to arrest her momentum herself, but the blind bandit did it for her with an elbow to the face from above. Gravity took over. Within 2 seconds she hit the very mountain she'd been trying to avoid, tearing the peak off the rest of the rock. A dull crunch heralded Toph's next attack. For the mountain itself rose, soil dripping from its broken base as the woman in green and white raised it over her head. A negligent gesture lifted it higher still, its owner grinning. Catch! Then Toph dropped it on her. Thud! Kaguya's hand snapped up as the mountain descended on her, a sharp cutting motion bifurcating the falling stone, momentarily obscuring her vision. She never saw the attack. One moment she was brushing away the dirt and soil, the next, clenched knuckles found her stomach. The blow rocked her back on a heel, forced her to stagger a step, something that shouldn't have happened. Balking, she reeled, snarling as Toph's earth-clad fist struck her chin, forcing her head upwards and her feet from the floor. Kaguya forced it down with the muscles of her neck alone, and the resulting head but sent her attacker reeling, eliciting a laugh of all things from the mistress of earth. Toph just laughed and flung herself after her again, power-swollen fist colliding against the goddess's chin in a brutal roundhouse. 7 hells, she actually felt that one. Why won't you go down? Toph grinned. Then she started to laugh. Heh. Hee 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 hee. It started out soft and soothing, the sly giggle of one gone mad. Ha 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 ha. Then, abruptly, it jumped 3 octaves, leaping into an insane shriek that would have left a normal woman's hair standing on end, their skin rippling in gooseflesh as that voice skipped into an insane shriek. The clapping certainly didn't help either, the harsh sound of her palms smacking together, with a harsh, continuous pop of sound. It was the strangest sight she had ever witnessed, and yet at the same time, the most terrifying sound he'd ever heard, because she was the one making it. Then she grinned. You didn't think I was just limited to Earth now, did you? A dainty hand rose, fingers clenching into a fist, as did its twin, firm digits knuckling up. Then she swung at the air. Hard. Crack. And reality crumbles. Hairline fractures form across the very sky itself, as her hands splintered the sky on either side of her. Reality turned itself inside out, and upside down as the goddess looks on, baffled. Those fractures soon become cracks, then outright fissures, air cracking and splintering as she looked on in quiet confusion. What manner of felt power was this? She should only be an earthbender. She shouldn't be able to warp reality as she saw fit. In the end, only one word came to mind. What? Toph flexed her fingers, smiling. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I upset the widow Wabbit princess? Kaguya scowled. I will kill you, I swear. Oh, really? Kaguya froze as a shadow fell over her, suddenly keenly aware of the pressure against her back. Something compelled her to turn, and she did so slowly, twitching, turning wide eyes upon the rising form at her back. A look of terror crossed those pale orbs as they regarded the recovering woman behind her. No, no, no! She should be dead. How was she not dead? Damn you, she hissed, turning on her heel, snarling as the woman picked herself up off the floor. Why won't you just? I was married to a living god. Her voice crashed down like an avalanche. I trained with him for years. Bore his children. Raised the little shits by myself. Do you have any idea how funking hard that was? Compared to that pain, this is nothing. The fist barreled into her face with gusto, bending her nose, destroying the capillaries in her nostrils and splitting her face in half. Blood poured onto her white hands as Kaguya struggled to hold her face together amidst a cacophony of cries and curses. A feral hiss was all she heard before a bent knee struck her from behind, splitting her defenses as though they were made of plaster. Flailing, she swung about to face her opponent, but to no avail. Toph was already gone from her sight. And then she returned. "God, you! What is this?" Hands of earth and soil swarmed up out of nowhere, latching onto Kaguya's ankles. Thrashing, she shook them off, only for more to take their place. For every tether of the nether she destroyed, more arose to take their plaque. Hands of cloth and stone, earth and bone rising from the ruined ground to tangle her up, locking her arms and legs to her sides, restricting her movements. The more she struggled, the worse it became, a strange, eerie numbness settling over her extremities. Starting at the tips of her fingers, it spread rapidly, engulfing every aspect of her until she could barely remember to think, to breathe. "This will never hold me." The Lady of the Earth didn't answer, she merely gestured, summoning forth more bindings, tangling her further. "Korra! Now!" Kaguya has half a heartbeat to see a blur of brown and blue. "How? I broke her leg." She shouldn't be able to move, and another to feel the hand lock around her forehead. Then her chest. "Those hands are they glowing?" In peril she struggles, but even as she does, a strange weakness takes hold of her, quelling her attempts at resistance, quashing her might, her power, her majesty. She shrieks, lashing out, but the avatar limps away, her glowing palms fading, leaving her limbs feeling dead. All her might evaporates, leaving her with only a shadow of her former might. "What have you done?" "Wait," she knows, energy bending, her power stolen, her strength stripped away. "How can you fools subjugate yourself to that man?" she demanded. "He's nothing more than a pawn in the long run. He'll abandon you again. Just you wait and see." Toph grinned. "Idiot or not, I still love him. That's reason enough for me." "You impudent, lovelorn little—" "Yeah, hate you too," Korra chimed, beaming. "I'm not going to seal you," the Master Bender informed her primly. "You just bust out again. And I can't kill you by myself, either." The coffin of earth and stone continued to creep around Kaguya as she spoke, taking the last fleeting sensations from her body. "So I worked out a compromise. I'm going to put you somewhere where you can never harm another soul, spirit or otherwise. I'm going to lock you up and throw away the key for all eternity. Have you ever been to a planet's core?" "I have." "You won't escape that. I hate you. You impudent little mortals. This world is mine. Do you hear me?" "Min." A hand closed around her mouth, silencing her diatribe. Toph's hands rose ponderously, forming a fist. "I'm going to bury you deep, blackness. So, you're dying." That wasn't a question. They both knew the answer. Neither wanted to give voice to game next, either Naruto nor Toph. It wasn't the most eloquent way to put things, but then again, she had never been one to sugarcoat things. Honestly, hearing her voice alone was enough to make Naruto smile. Even if he couldn't see her. Gods! Just how badly had been hurt. He couldn't see anything, really. Most of his senses were muted. He was only distantly aware of her kissing his forehead, of her hands propping him up against a boulder. Still, here, he could hear her speaking to him, smell the earthy scent that always preceded her presence. There was a certain irony in being blind as a bat. He was just too tired to appreciate it. Unfortunately, his partner didn't take too kindly to his morbid outlook, because she clobbered him a heartbeat later. "Hey!" Toph slapped his cheek, jerking him back to reality with a harsh crack of sound. "Don't fall asleep. You won't wake up again." Naruto coughed in surprise, but sure enough, the pain hauled him out of the sweet embrace of slumber. Only time would tell if it lasted, or if he survived the next 5 minutes for that matter. Having your soul torn in half and your body shredded from the inside out was painful to say the least. He'd fallen. And for the life of him, he couldn't muster the strength to get up. That should be concerning. But he was just too tired to care. Already he felt that brief burst of energy fading. Toph slapped him, twice. Again. Hey! Had he possessed his sight, Naruto would have glowered at her. As it stood, he could only snarl and sweat ineffectually as she stood and slung him over her shoulder. At least, he assumed it was her shoulder. He couldn't very well tell in his condition. But there was the decidedly faint sensation of being lifted, and the shame that came with it. His ears pricked at the faint sound of a sob. Don't you dare die on me. The words were a snarl. I finally found you again. So don't die. I forbid it. A loose rustle. I don't think that's how it works. Forbidden. Well, unless you know how to stitch up a man's insides and fix his eyes, you have to face facts. Naruto found his own response turn bitter as he realized here, at the end, he didn't want to go. Didn't want to step into that abyss again, never to return. I'm sorry it's been so long, I'm sorry it's going to be this way, but I'll be lucky to survive till nightfall. Is it night? Somewhere nearby, he heard Korra groan. Come on now, don't be like that. We won! You can't give up now, he waved a hand weakly. Still can't see you, kiddo. You'll have to do better than that. He didn't need his eyes to know Toph was giving them both the look again. He felt the chills sure enough. As a matter of fact, I might know somebody. The avatar of change blinked. That doesn't sound fun. It wasn't. Not at all. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story. And also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.